Last week, me and Vinny went into cyber liability insurance carriers and how they're cracking down on law firms and businesses for that matter, because this is not just a law firm problem, on those businesses and law firms' cybersecurity preparedness. And in some cases, these cyber liability insurance carriers, if you don't meet their requirements, if you're deficient, they're going to deny coverage. So what's this mean for your law firm and again, a business, any business for that matter, because cyber liability insurance is necessary for every business. What's it mean is that it takes time for you to get ready so that you can check that checkbox saying that you meet their standards. And so, it means that we need to understand what those standards are. And we're going to go into the application last week from OBLIC for their cyber liability insurance. But many people asked for this deep dive, so that's where we're at. We were gave an overview. This week we're going to go diving deep. But before we get to that, I'd like to welcome everyone. This is Jim. I'm Jim Gaston. This is No Law Firm Left Behind. I'm joined today with Vinny Del Val. Vinny, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
I know. This is a good topic. So what Vinny and I and Dave, who's missing this week, who will probably be on next week, and we'll talk about Dave's exciting news next week. We're here to help your law firm be more competitive, making your staff and your attorneys more efficient, all to help you get and keep clients. That's what No Law Firm Left Behind is here for. And so, Vinny, I want to get right in because I don't want to waste time. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you start, I just want to say, this is the Ohio requirements, right? But that doesn't mean that if you're in another state that this might not be coming your way. So I just want to make that clear.
This is the first application that came across our desks that was this deep in its requirements. And it's from OBLIC, the Ohio State Bar Association Insurance Agency. It is for additional cyber liability insurance above and beyond what their existing policy offers. And if you need more information about it, talk to Rick Creel from OBLIC. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him actually in our live stream from last week. But this is the application from Tokyo Marine. It happens to be this particular application. Every application could be different. Every state's rules could be different for insurance. We're not those experts. We're the experts on telling you how to get ready to check the checkbox and say yes in most of these cases. Thanks for that clarification, Vinny. So Vinny, let's get to it. On this application, and I don't want to keep saying that, so I'm not going to say that again on this application, okay? But on this application, what it asks for, Vinny, is it says there's a section about records, okay? Do you collect, store, host, process, control, use, or share any private or sensitive information with an asterisk, sensitive information, in either paper or electronic form? We're not going to talk about the paper part because that's not our realm. Now, that asterisk, Vinny, says private or sensitive information includes any information or data that can be used to uniquely identify a person, including but not limited to, and this varies from state to state, so this is probably for the state's application, Social Security numbers and other government identification numbers, payment card information, driver's license numbers, financial account numbers, personal identification numbers, PINs, usernames, passwords, healthcare records, and email addresses. Broad strokes right there, if you ask me. But generally, Vinny, this follows under the PII and PHI in the state of Ohio. So, Vinny, how does a law firm or business, for that matter, determine that, right? And how they differentiate between a regular document and one that has this?
Yeah, and to say, this sounds a lot like GDPR, the standards that are out in Europe. Here in the U.S., we don't have a general standard that covers the entire, state by state. They're starting to mandate different things, but and now the private industry is requiring these types of standards. PII, it was what we call personal identifiable information, anything that can be used to identify a person, right? And again, like you said, it could be anything from Social Security numbers, birth dates, driver's license information, anything that's personal that identifies that person, you have to protect. You have to make sure that it's protected, because that's really what the bad actors out there are trying to get, because they're trying to make money, or they're
I think
trying to.
I don't want to get too deep into it. Personally, I think that's their secondary goal, right? To get that information for resale, right?
Yeah, for
I
resale.
think,
But
yeah,
they also hold it hostage, right?
that's
They
exactly right.
they say, I have all this information and I'm going to release it unless you pay me, right?
Right, right.
Um, and so, or they say, it's encrypted and we're not going to decrypt it for you until you pay me,
So
right?
now I happen to believe, and I'm pretty sure about this, and every state's different. Every state has rules on what PII is and PHI. They're generally accepted from state to state, but I believe in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, it's three pieces of information that make a person personally identifiable. So it's not a first and last name only. It's not a first and last name. And it's got to include certain elements, a social security number or a driver's license or an address. So an address an address, I believe it's this, an address and a first and last name may not be it. It might need that additional requirement of a social security number or a driver's license number. We're not your attorneys, right? We're not your attorneys. You should talk to Dave, who's an attorney about this stuff. By the way, that's a little tip, a little secret. Dave is now an attorney, everyone. He was always, but now he's full-time attorney. So Vinny, how does one get into these datas and the data that they've got on their environment and make this, we're looking for the number of electronic records, Vinny. I mean, talk to me about that. Is that something that's easily done?
Unless you have some type of document management system that has that metadata stored somewhere where you can pull reports or such, pull lists. It can be hard to identify.
Yeah.
But I mean, this information can be in multiple systems as well, like
Yeah.
for practice management systems, billing systems, accounting systems. It could be in document systems. I mean, there's a lot of different places that this information can be. So it is, but it is somewhat difficult to at times, unless you have a good auditing system. It is somewhat difficult to at times determine what that number is.
Yeah, yeah. And so some of the systems that are out there that can help with this, if you're using document management, many of them have e-discovery add-ons, right? That can help with this. If you're using Microsoft 365, it's got built in to SharePoint and OneDrive features that can go through all of the records, email, documents, Teams messages, the lists, databases, all in Microsoft 365 and tell you how much is there and to what degree. But Vinny, you mentioned something beforehand. Let's differentiate between a regular document, versus something that's got PII in it. Not every document or every database record has got PII in it.
Yeah, that's not, and they're not looking for number of documents that are pertaining to a particular client. They're really looking for what number of records do you have? And a record could be a record in a database. It doesn't have to be a particular document, right?
Yeah.
What number of records do you have that has this information?
Yeah, and so what a lot of law firms do, they just say, how many documents do we have? It's probably better to, I'm not your lawyer, okay? But I would think that it would be better to overguess than to underguess in this situation. And how many client records do you have in your case management or your billing system? Things of that nature that are private, and as I said, private or sensitive information. So here's the second part of the record section, Vinny. Okay. Do you collect, store, host, control, process, use, or share biometric information or data such as fingerprints, voice prints, facial, hand, iris, or retinal scans, DNA, or any other biological, physical, or behavioral characteristics that can be used to uniquely identify a person? Now, there's a yes on this. Okay, so if yes, right? So there's a big one here, and this is in bold. Have you reviewed? It's kind of a two-part question. Have you reviewed your policies relating to the collection, storage, and destruction of such information or data with a qualified attorney, Dave Myers, and confirm compliance with applicable federal, state, and local and foreign laws, right? And so the first question has to do with you store it.
Yeah, so this one's a little bit tricky, right? Because it doesn't specify if that's for client or if that's for the law firm itself. I'm assuming that, it can cover either one.
Doesn't matter. It says identify a person.
Yep, it says identify a person. So when you use your iPhone and it has facial recognition, or when you have, a thumbprint reader on your computer, in a sense, that information is stored on those devices in order to authenticate.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how does that fall? For me, I don't know. I really don't know how that falls under that. But most people will say, no, I don't do any of that. Right. I think most law firms will say, yeah, we don't store any of that information anywhere.
Right.
And the reality is that you do have some information there, and you want to have systems in place for destruction if the device gets lost or stolen, right? So that you can wipe that device remotely and remove that type of information, removing wiping computers when employees leave to make sure that information is gone, and that type of thing.
Yeah, I don't claim to know the reason they ask these questions the way they do, but to me, this mostly goes to your staff more than your clients in most law firms. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see law firms storing DNA, but yeah, your thumbprint.
I guess.
What's that?
I guess it would depend what kind of law they practice.
I guess so. So, and so, Vinny, how would we know that? Again, let's talk about some of those sources. Your facial recognition on your iPhone. If you have controls over the mobile devices for your staff, let's just assume it's staff, right? And so you have a device, a cell phone that's got facial recognition on it. Okay, is that facial recognition? You need to determine, is it kept and secured by the individual on their provider, Apple or Google or whoever that might be, or is it a requirement of your mobile device management software, Intune or whatnot? And same thing with your laptops or Surface devices or notebooks, or even for desktops that can have a thumbprint scan as a two-factor or a biometric login. Where is that information stored? Is it stored in a cloud provider somewhere, which is another question altogether, right? Or do you have some modicum of control on some software? Actually, I think that hey, listen, this is a good example. I know that a nursing company that we actually work with and help, every one of their people have to be thumbprinted and scanned and cleared by a background check, right? So that would be definitely something that would raise an eyebrow. I don't know if they're keeping it. I don't know who's keeping it, who's in control of it, but definitely something that should be, hey, I don't know, Mr. Insurance Carrier Broker. I need to ask that question. So if you're hiring your people and you're doing thumbprints to clear them for maybe your law firm that works for the government and they need certain levels of clearance, The second part of that, I love it. It's a loaded question. I love loaded questions. I'm a master at loaded questions. If yes on that question, have you reviewed your policies? Stop right there. Have you reviewed your policies? You've got to have policies to review. So if you don't have a policy to review, inherent to this question is the fact that you have to have that policy or you have to say no. Would you agree, Vinny?
Yep.
So now, inherent to the question, have you reviewed your policies? You got to have a policy related to collection, storage, destruction. I love the destruction part of such information or data with qualified attorney. Now, also it says with a qualified attorney, not just any attorney. not just your insurance carrier broker either. Okay. A qualified attorney, another plug for Dave Myers. And so, Dave, you owe me for this. And so, and confirmed compliance. Confirmed is a big word there, right? Confirmed compliance with applicable federal, state, local, and foreign laws. Lots of room there for a mistake, and lots of questions in that question before you can say yes. All right. So, Vinny, I'm going to pick this apart a little bit, and Dave's not here, so we won't speak for him. But this is exactly what Dave does now: is makes these policies. That's what he was doing for the last bunch of years with us as well. He makes these policies up for businesses and law firms, and then puts them in cycle for review and so on and so forth. Part of that is absolutely the storage of them. How are we storing them? How are we collecting it? And how are we destroying them? Destroying is an important aspect of that. Would you agree, Vinny?
Yeah. I think Dave mentioned at some point that we shouldn't have, just keep records forever and ever and ever, right? That's our tendency. Oh, we have more space, and we just add more space if we need it. And all of a sudden, we have all this data everywhere that we never curate, we never do anything with.
Yeah, right? And that's on premise and online too, in your cloud providers.
And so, making sure that's periodically or even systematically addressed, I think is an important piece.
There needs to be a data destruction policy, and you can automate much of this with many of the things that are out there today, but we just don't. It's called data bloat. We don't want data bloat anymore. I know law firms kind of feel like, we have to keep it, forever. Well, do you remember the old days when we used to send somebody down to the storage or the basement to grab boxes to shred them? It's pretty much the same thing for electronic now, wouldn't you say, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's just as relevant.
Yeah, very, very important. So Dave can help you with these policies. If you can't find Dave on LinkedIn now, Dave Myers at Buckingham, right? And so hook us up and we'll get you to him. Okay, last question, Vinny. Last question, and it's a one-part question, but it's got a lot of bold stuff on it. So I love the simpleness of the initial question. Do you use a cloud provider to store data or host applications? Then, of course, they've got, paragraphs almost, it seems like, of bold stuff. If yes, please provide the name of the cloud provider, right? Just the one, Vinny, right? Everybody uses just one. So it's kind of funny. You're using more than one cloud provider. Just about every law firm is. If you use more than one cloud provider to store data, specify the cloud provider storing the largest quantity of sensitive customer and or employee records, including medical records, PHI, social security numbers, bank account details, and credit card numbers for you, right? And so that's kind of nice that they're looking for just the one biggest one, right? The other small ones don't matter so much, I guess. Doesn't make any sense to me. Well, Vinny, how do you determine the one provider that is storing the most data for you? Isn't that kind of a tough one?
Well, hopefully it's not your email provider, because this type of information should probably not be communicated over email, right? Unless it's encrypted email. Now, there are good options out there for encrypted email, and it's possible that this information is sitting on your email through encrypted messages. But a lot of times, this would be either a cloud-based document management system or a cloud-based practice management system or cloud-based billing system. All of those types of things, what contains more of that information than the other is really what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And it would be different for every firm. It would hard for me to say, hey, it's this particular one that you need to target, but you need to consider them all, and you need to look at them and say, okay, what has more of this PII or this PHI personal?
What they're saying in medical records, PHI, social security numbers, bank account details, credit card numbers, so on and so forth, of both your employees and your customers. So, I don't like to extrapolate, but notice it does say employee records here, which we were concerned whether that question before had anything to do with employees. This one.
Now you're talking about payroll companies, benefit companies.
Yeah.
Any type of solutions that they have in the cloud as well.
Brokers for 401ks, man, so on and so forth. So, I think the important thing here is, and this was going to be the last question we covered because I don't want to go over today. We're going to have a couple of other parts on this one because we've got about at least another show, maybe show and a half on this application questions. These are very common across the board. These are standards. Every insurance provider is going to want to know basically this kind of stuff and maybe more. And some of them are going to get really specific. But Vinny, let's split something up here for a second. Let's take a cloud provider like a Microsoft 365. Well, that the vast majority of our customers are using Microsoft 365, but some of them are just using it for email. Some of them are using it for email and storing their documents in Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive, right? And some of them build applications, actually have Microsoft Azure servers that are part of the Microsoft cloud infrastructure. So
or CRMs like Dynamics or something.
Dynamics, right. So I know we don't want PII and all that stuff, PHI and all this other stuff in email, please. And if you do, definitely change your practices today, right now. Nothing should be sent like this that's not encrypted. And if somebody sends it to you, talk to a lawyer about how you handle that. But Vinny, could we still list Microsoft as that company because we use servers in their cloud and we use SharePoint for Microsoft 365 and OneDrive? I mean, even though it's not email.
Absolutely, it could be Microsoft as your source, even though you might not have it in email, you might have it in SharePoint or some other products that they have. There's a lot of different Microsoft products. They're pretty big companies. So,
what about Dropbox?
They offer a lot of great tools.
Could Dropbox be in that mix? Could Google Drive be in that mix?
Yep, depending on the firm and how they use the cloud providers.
Yep. And if they're using case management tools, right, like Cosmolex or Clio or any other hosted application out there, that could be the case there as well. I mean, you could have that information in those places as well. Mm-hmm. So, if you don't have an IT provider or an IT team that can help you figure this kind of stuff out, post a question in the comments and we'll point you in the right direction. But most of these companies have the ability nowadays. They're getting these questions over and over again. So they're looking at compliances themselves, SOC 2, and so on and so forth. And they may have reports that they can run to help in these situations. So, you know what, Vinny, next week, we're going to talk about information network security controls and ransomware controls. I think that those two kind of go hand in hand. We'll split them up on this application so that, again, the goal here is to be prepared in advance to check that checkbox yes when you get your insurance renewal application and you're coming across the cyber liability coverage. Is there any last final words on this, Vinny?
No, I think, obviously security is being taken more seriously now, even by your vendors. And they're putting more requirements on you as a law firm. And it's across the industry, really. Everyone knows that this has been a rising problem, right?
Yeah.
And so we see it in the news pretty much monthly, almost weekly at times, about attacks here and attacks there. If you keep up with the technology updates, you see all kinds of vulnerabilities that are out there, and the industry has to react. And so doing a better job at protecting ourselves and then protecting our data and protecting our clients' data.
Yeah, the sad truth is that an insurance company's job is to ultimately make money, and not necessarily spend too much money. I mean, they have budgets like everyone else, right? And so how do they do that? Well, they have to limit their risk and exposure, which means that they have to force their clients to limit their risk and exposure and not have clients that are not good risks. So every business and law firm should be out there trying to ensure that they're a good risk. And I think we have just a responsibility to do that just in general. Forget for the insurance coverage, right? We have clients and people that trust us with their data and information. So, well, Vinny, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Great topic, great answers. And we look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday, 10:30 Eastern time. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon. And they'll find links in all of our posts to those locations. So thanks a lot, Vinny. Thanks a lot, everyone. If you have questions, again, post them after the show. We see them. Also, go subscribe to our No Law from Left Behind group on LinkedIn. Here's the link right here. And so we love questions in this group. We also have the YouTube channel, which is growing in subscribers as well. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks a lot. Share this link out to everyone. Like and comment. Take care.
Take care.